you've come ready for another exciting story. Not just any story, a Bible story, filled with excitement, fire, and God's power. So, long ago in the land of Babylon, there was a very mighty and big king, and his name was Nebuchadnezzar. I know, a very long name. He was a very powerful king and got whatever he wanted. I'm sure some of you would like that as well. But this king could have his armies, he had a big castle, and just lots and lots of people who followed him and worshipped him. But he had a very proud heart, which is not very good, is it? So, one day, the king, Nebuchadnezzar, said in a deep, mighty voice, I am going to build the biggest, largest, and the tallest statue this world has ever seen. And everyone must bow down to it. Then the king started to build this statue. And it was huge and taller than anything that anyone had ever seen before. So, I'm going to teach you a little song to remember about this big castle. So, the golden statue was big and shiny. The golden statue was big and shiny. Bigger than the clouds, shinier than the moon. The golden statue was big and shiny. Okay, so after they had built this mighty and big statue, the king ordered that everyone must come around, and once they hear the sound of an instrument, they must bow down to it. So they started to play the musical instruments, all the harps and the trumpets and everything, and they started to play. And as they began playing, everyone was worshipping down and bowing down to it, except for 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, when the king found out that these 3 young men were not bowing down to his statue, you can imagine he was very, very, very angry. So, the king called these 3 young men and asked them, why would you not bow down to my statue? And the young men replied that they will not bow down to any statue because they only worship the one and only true God. Now, you can imagine, he was even angrier and angrier. And he said to them, I give you one more chance. The next time you hear the instruments play, you must bow down to it. So, the next day, the instruments began playing. And as you can imagine, people were bowing down to it, and everyone was worshipping it. However, these 3 young men still did not worship the statue. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar was furious, and he asked for them to bring his soldiers to bring them and told them to come. So what they did. Now I'm sure you're wondering, were they not afraid? Of course they were afraid. He was a king. He could do whatever he wanted to them. But they trusted in God, and they believed that they would never worship anybody but God. So they came to the king. And the king told them, since you have decided to disobey me, now you're going to pay for it. So the king had this mighty big furnace. Whoosh, the fires came. And king asked that they should put up the fires 7 times hotter than it already was. Now, I'm sure it was raging, red, fiery. But the king still said, will you not still bow down? And they said they will never bow down because if they'll rather get burnt to crisps than bow down to the statue. So the soldiers took them and threw them in. But even the soldiers got burnt, even though they didn't enter. So now they were thrown into the furnace, wearing thick clothes and everything. And they were there, and nothing happened. Can you even believe that? They were in a hot furnace, and nothing happened to them. They were just in there, and they were fine, walking around it like they were just having the best time of their lives. So the king saw this and the people who were with him and thought, and those the men who we threw into the furnace, how are they not burnt by now? And they also looked and saw there was a 4th person into the furnace, who they thought must have been an angel. So the king told them to bring the men out. And then the other soldiers came and they took the men out of the furnace, and they saw that they were completely fine. Nothing had happened to them. They didn't even smell like smoke. And when they brought them out, the king spoke to them and said, wow, that truly they must serve the only true God. And the king said now that nobody must touch them, and every single person must bow down to their God. So, what can we learn from this story? Hello, Sarah.
Hello. I wanted to answer your question. We can learn from the story that no matter what, we need to trust God and stand up for God.
And that's absolutely right. We all need to learn from this story that, like Sarah said, we must trust God and believe in God and know that whatever happens, He will always be with us and keep us. Yes?
Is it true that they went in the furnace and they didn't even smell of smoke?
Yes, that's exactly true. It just shows God's amazing power, because how do you even go near a fire and not smell like smoke? But that's how God works in wondrous and marvelous ways. Thank you all for joining today, and I pray you'll be back for another exciting story.